Well, hey, everybody. If you're over in East, welcome back. We said goodbye for just a little bit, but we're glad you're here. And if you're watching online, I hope you got a good cup of coffee or something. We miss you. Hope you'll come join us in person. West, how we doing? Good, yeah. I don't know if you know this or not, but it's really important that you do, so I want to make sure that I say it out loud right out of the gate. Your faith is extremely important to God. You're like, I know. That's why I got up early on a Sunday in the middle of the rain to come to church. My faith is really important to God, but have you ever wondered why? Why is it important to God? When I was growing up, I imagined that in heaven there's a big scoreboard. And God always wants to be winning on the scoreboard. So one of the reasons our faith is important is because when we put our faith in Jesus or our faith grows, points go on the board for God and all of heaven celebrates. And to some degree that may be true. The problem with that is that underneath is the belief that God somehow needs us. God somehow needs us to win. I'm just going to tell you, I don't want to believe in a God that needs me, because then he's not God. I want to believe in a God that's bigger than me. And if that's the case, and I believe that I have a relationship with one who is bigger than me and does not need me to win, he wins no matter what, regardless of what I do or what I think or what I say. We come back to the question then of what makes faith so important to him? Well, it's you. The reason that it's so important to him is because you're extremely important to God. That God wants your faith to grow. God wants you to be able to move past just having religion for you, so that you can experience a deep, trusting relationship with him. So that you can experience what Jesus called the fullest of lives. He said, that's what I came to give you, life to the fullest. But in order to experience that and have that, you're going to have to trust me. So what I want for you is your faith to grow. It's important to me because the more your faith grows, the more you trust me. The more you trust me, the better things are. Your faith is extremely important to God because you are extremely important to God. And what we've been wrestling with is why or how do we actually grow our faith then? If we're not going to just have a membership to some religion or some church or Christianity, we're actually going to engage in it and see it make an impact in our lives and the lives around us, then what do we need to do? We can't just sit in the parking lot of the gym, right? You got to go in and do something in the gym. And we've found 5 things. We've talked about 2 of them so far. We're going to hit on a 3rd thing today. But I want to pause because there's a temptation that I've had as I've explored these 5 things that God uses to grow my faith. And the temptation is this, to turn those 5 things into a checklist. They're things that I got to get done. So I wake up in the morning, I drive to the office, and I put a message on the podcast thing, right? And I'm listening to it, practical teaching, done. Lunch break, I'll go back out to my car, I'll put on some worship music, I'll read the Bible, and I'll pray. Check. Then later in the week, I'm going to volunteer at church for a couple hours, personal ministry. Check. The other things, I'm going to have relationships with people, I'm going to trust God in my pivotal circumstances, so on and so forth. Check. I'm an awesome Christian, and God is lucky to have me. You see, we inadvertently go right back to where we started, that God somehow needs you and me to win, and that's just too small of a God for me. I don't want to have a relationship or believe in a God that needs me to check things off of a list in order to make himself feel good. So what I'm going to push you to do is think more environmentally with these things. These aren't things for you to necessarily do. They're things for you to be immersed in, to have woven into every little part of your life. And here's the good news. You are a part of a church here at Great Lakes that is committed to making sure that practical teaching, private disciplines, personal ministry, providential relationships, and pivotal circumstances are a part of every environment we create. Whether that environment is for students or for kids or for adults, for people that are new to the faith, like Starting Point, or checking out the faith, like Starting Point, or groups, or whatever the case may be, we're going to work really hard to make sure that all of these things are a part of every environment that you might be part of. Because if your faith is extremely important to God because you are extremely important to God, then you and your faith are extremely important to us. And we'll do whatever it takes to help you grow in that way. So today, what I want to talk about is this idea of personal ministry. And we've got to pause for a minute and talk about what are we saying here. Because when you look at me, I'm given all kinds of titles, by the way. Sometimes I get called pastor. Sometimes I get called reverend. Sometimes I get called father, not by my kids, which is strange to me. Sometimes I get called minister, right? So a lot of times, like on forms that I have to fill out to officiate a wedding or something, it'll say minister at the bottom. And a lot of people go, well, you're kind of a professional Christian. You get paid to do this thing. You're a minister. And the church has ministries, right? And if you've ever been a part of other churches, you know how this goes. There's a men's ministry and a women's ministry and a knitting ministry and a kids ministry and all kinds of ministries just get put together. And it's usually like fun little clubs for people that are interested in those particular things. But what happens is we lose sight of what actually is a ministry. Have you ever wondered about that? The silence is evident that you have. You just don't want to admit that you've been a part of a ministry for a long time. You have no idea what it means. To be a minister, all that you have to do is meet the needs of other people. That's it. It's putting the needs of other people before your own and then doing something about those needs. That's what it means to minister to someone else. So, good news, bad news. You're a minister too. You're a minister too. And that's why we're going to make this personal. Something that you're doing, something that you are bringing to the table that might be unique to just you, but God can and will use nonetheless. And ultimately, how he'll use it is to grow you, not just the people that you impact. The discomfort you're feeling right now, the temptation you have to go, I have to go to the bathroom, and then go get in the car, is that you've had a million knots in your stomach for the last few seconds. And I don't mean knots like you're nervous. I mean knots like, I'm not going to do that. It sounds like this. I'm not qualified. I'm not prepared. I'm not available. I'm not funny enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not trained enough. I'm not fill in the blank, right? You've got that list that ran off real quick. Not. So I can't do personal ministry because I'm not it. I'm not that guy. That's what my kids would say. You're not that guy. That's the temptation for us, is we don't fit into some mold, so God cannot use us as ministers. But over and over again in the New Testament, the letters that were written by Paul and by Peter and James and John, they say over and over again that we're all ministers. The real reason the knots fire off and the discomfort rises up is not so much because of you, but because of those that you're maybe being invited to minister to, because the needs are great. It can feel like all of that is just closing in on us. It can feel like a drop of water in the ocean. Can we actually make a difference in all of this? Think about the world in which we live, the city in which we live, the family that you're trying to lead. Take it down to whatever level you want. You know there's a lot happening there. And what can we actually do about it? What can I actually do? We're tempted to always go, that's for someone else to worry about. Someone more skilled, more funny, more whatever. Because I'm not, right? Just yesterday, I went with a crew. We partner with Sleep in Heavenly Peace in town. If you don't know about this, it's an amazing ministry, and I would love it if you'd pick a Saturday and go work with them. They deliver beds to kids in our city and in Racine who do not have a bed. And you're going, how can that be? Here's what's crazy. They've delivered 2,100 beds over the last 6 years. There's still a 450 kid waiting list. That's how many kids don't have beds. And I heard that and I felt overwhelmed. My crew delivered 1 bed yesterday. And the temptation is to go, well, it's not actually making any difference, so should we actually be doing any of this? The answer, of course, is yes. But the reason the answer is yes is not what you think. But that sense of overwhelm, I know it really well. That sense of like, there's a huge task in front of me and I don't feel qualified to do it. The last time I felt it most distinctly was when I flooded my own basement. You heard me right. Because I'm not the smartest person in the world. I will never pretend to be. And there was a day in my life where I thought I was really going to become a runner. Silly, I know. But we had a treadmill in our basement. And so I went down to get on the treadmill and I thought, there's only one way I'm going to make it through this, and that's if I can watch television while I do this. This has just got to be the thing happening in the background so I can focus on the TV. The problem was my basement had a very limited number of outlets to plug all of these devices into. So I made one available by unplugging my sump pump. I know, I'm in the future too. And I forgot to plug it back in. It poured rain that night. And so I got up the next day to about 3 inches of water in my basement. And I would love to pretend that I just went and got my Superman cape out of the closet and like handled it like, you know, a baller or boss or whatever, and I'd be lying to you because I freaked out. I legitimately lost my mind for about 10 minutes. And I was so overwhelmed and overcome by how am I actually going to fix this? How am I going to do this? And I don't want to call my dad because I know what he's going to say. And I remember I actually sat down on the steps going down to the basement. I started to cry because I was so distraught. I don't even know how to start. And then my 18-year-old son came down and put his arm around me and said, "Dad, we got this." And I said, "Son, you're crazy." What I had forgotten and didn't think about, though, was my 18-year-old son had been working at an indoor water park for the last 6 months. And in so doing, had become an expert in water removal. Because water gets splashed all over a water park, and at the end of the shift, they have to get the water off the deck to get it to dry for the next day. And so what Jake showed me was that if you have a 2x4, you can move water like crazy. So we had these rugs and all these things that were now soaked, and he took these 2x4s and he put them on the ground and put his weight on them, and he pushed, and the water came squeezing out of there like you wouldn't believe. And about 2 hours later, the basement was clear of all the water. All the rugs, because they were too heavy to carry initially, were up at the curb, getting ready to get thrown away. And I realized I didn't have much in that moment, but I had him. And he was enough to get the job done. That 18-year-old showed this then 41-year-old something special. And I think that's a little how it works with Jesus and you. See, I think that what you got is more important than what you're not. I was not an expert in basement water damage cleanup or removal. But I had somebody that was, and I applied his understanding to my actions, and it changed the game. And so when it comes to volunteering or serving or ministering to other people, your temptation is going to be, I don't got a lot. But what you got, what you do have, I know the English majors in the room are freaking out on me. It's okay. What you do have, it's way more important. Even if it's way less than what you don't have, what you do have is way more important. And I know this because over and over again, Jesus would do amazingly big things with really small things. The best example is when he got on a boat, went to the other side of the lake, and a huge crowd gathered to see him. And that's where I want to jump in. Matthew wrote this down for us to read. The reason it being Matthew is so important is because math is going to be a big part of what makes this next story so amazing. And he was a tax collector, so he's really good with numbers. This is what we read. As soon as Jesus heard the news, he left in a boat to a remote area to be alone. You might be wondering, what was the news? The news was his cousin, John the Baptist, had just had his head chopped off. Literally. He had been executed, head put on a silver platter, dead. Jesus just hears this. In the midst of what was becoming kind of a world-famous tour. I mean, everybody's coming to see Jesus, and he's healing people, and he's helping people, and he's teaching people, and then he finds out that his cousin had been brutally executed. So he decides he's going to go to a remote place, but the crowds heard where he was headed and followed on foot from many towns. No one had any kind of respect for Jesus' rhythm or his mental health, or was this his off day, any of that kind of stuff. You know why? Because they had needs. And when people have needs, they don't wait for when it's convenient for the people that can help meet those needs. And so they have come to know that Jesus, he can help them. So when they see him get in a boat and head across the lake, they know, well, it's not that long of a walk. We can meet him on the other side. And we'll just kind of demand that he help us in the ways that we need help. So my question is, how would you have felt if you were in Jesus' shoes? Think about what it's like after a long, difficult day at work. You maybe got a lot done, but it didn't come easily. And you had to deal with coworkers that are less than pleasant all the time, and all you want to do is get home, take your shoes off, lay down on the couch, and be still. If you're a parent, you know what that's like, though. You walk in the door, and a few people need your help right away. Cook for me, feed me, clean me, do my homework for me. I have a science project due tomorrow. Like, you know what that's like. Or you get home and your friends call. Hey, we're moving now. Can you come help us? You got a truck. Right? Like these things pop up almost, you can almost predict it. When you're at your lowest, someone's going to need your help. And that's what it was like for Jesus. Now understand just how overwhelmed you would feel, just how close all the need would feel to you, pressing in on you and feeling like it could crush you. Here's the math. At the very end of the story, Matthew records that there were 5,000 men in attendance for what we're about to read through. And you might go, okay, 5,000, that's a lot, but that's not crazy. But remember, they only counted men back in the day. So let's just be super, super conservative with our numbers here and assume that each of those guys only had one wife, which was not a guarantee, but we'll assume that they only had one wife. We're now at 10,000 people. And again, conservatively, let's guess that each of those couples had 2 children, which again was not a guarantee. But now we're talking about 20,000 people. That's an arena worth of people waiting for Jesus as the boat comes up. I need. And Jesus is amazing that he doesn't go, my cousin just died. Can I get a break? That's not how Jesus responds at all. But just imagine being in his footsteps where this is crushing down on you, and instead he responds this way. Jesus saw the huge crowd as he stepped from the boat, and he had compassion on them and healed their sick. That evening, the disciples came to him and said, this is a remote place and it's already getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go to the villages and buy food for themselves. I'm going to read through the lines for a minute. This is recorded nowhere. This is Josh's imagination running wild. Here's what probably happened. James and John were like, hey, I'm hungry. You hungry? Yeah, I could eat. Peter, go tell Jesus to send everybody home so we can get some food. And Peter probably goes, I got this. I'll tell them it's about them. It'll be our secret that it's about us. Hey, Jesus, how about you send everybody home? There's no McDonald's or Domino's or anything close by. This is too remote. And everybody's going to get hangry, and you don't want a hangry crowd, so you got to get them home to eat. I know you've met all their needs, but this new need, well, that's just too much. You might be able to heal the sick. You might even be able to raise people from the dead. You can turn water into wine, but feed 20,000 people? This new need is too much. That's going to overwhelm you and certainly us. So how about you send them home? Just to help put this in perspective, can you imagine if I said, everybody reach under your seat? Don't, because this is just pretend. Everybody reach under your seat, and if you have a gold star, congratulations, you've won having everybody that's part of Great Lakes Church over to your house today for lunch. You'd be like, I hope you like ramen. How are you going to feed all of these people? This is what the disciples are thinking. Look around. Even if we fed 1,000 of them, that's not even a dent in the needs that we're being faced with right now. In fact, we can't even get started because Jesus, we don't got nothing. This is what we read next. Jesus said, that isn't necessary. In other words, don't send them away. You feed them. And I just imagine the disciples being like, come on, are you serious? We came to you. Like, what are we going to do? We can't handle this. We only have 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. Think about that. 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish is really a meal for 2. Because you know we love that bread tray when it comes early at the restaurant, right? Like 5 loaves is not too many loaves. And if you're eating with me, I don't eat fish, so I'm going to eat extra bread. It's barely enough to feed 2 of us. And the disciples say, Jesus, this is all we have. Are you losing it? Is the heat getting to you? Too much sun? And what's crazy to me is that Jesus sees the need. It's not like he's oblivious to that everybody's going to be hungry and everybody's going to want to eat. He didn't turn to the disciples and say, we can't do this. He didn't say, they're not hungry. He just says it's not necessary for you to send them away. You feed them. And then the disciples are realizing he's just made their need our need. And the problem is we only have a finite amount of food. And this feels like an infinite amount of need. And right there is where you and I sit most of the time. God, I have a finite amount of talent. I have a finite amount of time. I have a finite amount of treasure. And the need, even just inside these walls of Great Lakes Church, is too much. So why even try? The disciples would probably have gone back at him and gone, Jesus, why even try? We don't have enough. You got to send everybody home. But what Jesus is about to do is show them that what you got is more important than what you're not. What you actually do have, albeit small, that's more important than the lack of food for everybody else. So again, Matthew, the math guy, I just imagine Peter coming over to him and going, okay, how small do we have to cut the bread and the fish? And Matthew probably came back with, Peter, you don't understand. This is an impossibility. Let me put it to you this way, Pete. In a few millennia, they're going to have this amazing thing called pizza. And they're going to cut those pizzas into about 8 slices. Which means if we were going to try and give 20,000 people 1 slice of pizza, which by the way is never enough, but we were going to give them 1, we would need 2,500 pizzas. And we're in a remote place. This isn't happening. So the disciples look back at Jesus, and he says, the line that hangs on me and hangs on you for all time. Bring them here. Bring the 2 fish and the 5 loaves to me. Because you're right, Pete. You're right, John. You don't have enough. You don't have what it takes to make the kind of impact that we need to make. I just imagine Jesus going, you forgot that I turned water into wine. You forgot that I raised a little kid from the dead. You forgot that like 5 minutes ago, I was healing people and blessing people left and right. Peter, guys, you forgot that you have me. You have 2 fish, 5 loaves, and the Son of God. You forgot you got me. And sometimes in my life, my guess is sometimes in your life, you forget that you have Jesus too. It's not just you showing up to meet the need. He goes with you. And that changes everything because Jesus is not overwhelmed by the need. He doesn't turn back to Peter and James and go, okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to start telling another story. You guys run to a far off town. You just got to buy out every store you can and bring the food back here. I don't know if we're going to make this happen or not. I'm kind of freaking out. Somebody should probably pray, right? Like, Jesus does not have a meltdown. He just says, all you got is that? Cool, bring it here. Bring it here. I think of all the miracles Jesus performed. I mean, it would be amazing to see him raise somebody from the dead. But man, I hope in heaven there's like a virtual reality thing that lets me sit out here and see this. Again, we are talking about a stadium worth of people. 2 little fish, 5 loaves, and a Messiah. And Jesus is not freaking out one little bit. In fact, Jesus isn't overwhelmed by the need. He overwhelms the need. Because if you know the story, everybody eats until they're full. It's not like everybody got a little bite and was like, that was a delicious Tic Tac. It was, we're full. I don't need any more. Push my plate away. And then the disciples go around collecting it, and they fill baskets full of leftovers. Where did that come from? I don't know. But Jesus did a Jesus thing. And he multiplied what they did have and made an incredible impact on an infinite amount of people beyond what they thought they could do. He met the needs, and more than the needs, of all of these people with so little. And all it took was the disciples going, here's all we got. Which is why what you got is more important than what you're not. All of those things inside of you going, I can't volunteer, I can't be a part of that team, I can't be a minister and meet the needs of other people, I can't do it, I'm not that person. Whatever you are is more important than any of that. If Jesus can take this little bit that the disciples gave him and do so much more with it, imagine what he can do with your little bit, what you bring him. What's so cool is that you and I get to be part of a community here at Great Lakes Church that has understood this principle now for almost 17 years. Great Lakes Church started in Dave Nelson's parents' living room with a very small group of people saying, here's my 2 fish and my 5 loaves. It's not much, but I'll offer what I got. And every month, week, year, from then on, people kept showing up going, I don't have a lot, but I got something, and God, you can use what I got. I wish it was more, but I'll trust it to you. And even today, there are people here way before I was here, setting up cones and parking signs and making coffee and rehearsing in the band and making sure the kids' environments were clean, and people just showing up and going, and every time I thank them, they're like, it's no big deal. And what they're saying in that is, I'm not contributing a lot, but here's what I know. If you don't get a couple cups of coffee in you, you're not going to be awake for anything I have to say. So I am dependent on everybody else bringing their little bit and contributing in that way. And what a difference that makes for our students and for our kids and for the people that will be in groups and the people that will lead groups and you as you sit in this room or in that room. What an amazing thing to get to be part of. And look at the impact that God's made in our city and in our county and in the counties next door because everybody showed up with just what they had. So the question is, what do you got? And you might say, not enough. To which Jesus would say, that's precisely enough. Bring it here. Whatever you got, bring it here. I can use it to do things you couldn't imagine to do with it. I can make an impact that you didn't think you were capable of being part of. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to use your gifting and I'm going to multiply it in ways that you can't understand. To the point where we'll overwhelm the need. The application of what we're talking about is so important. Actually doing it. Because over and over again in this series so far, we keep coming back to the idea that a gym membership doesn't get you in shape, a religion membership doesn't get you big faith. In fact, that religion membership's going to let you down. But actually stepping up and being part of something beyond ourselves that stretches us a little bit. You better believe the disciples were stretched that day. And this might sound cheesy, but stretching is working your faith muscle. And if you know anything about working out, you actually get stronger after you've exhausted your muscles. And so what if our faith gets bigger after we've exhausted it and we step outside of what's comfortable and we see what God can do with what we bring to the table? Holding on to all that for yourself isn't going to make any kind of difference. It's no secret, I love Disney World. My kids love Disney World because they don't really have a choice. And I had to make a decision in my life, and I know a lot of you are going to say, that was a dumb decision. But my decision was, I was going to have memories with my kids instead of money for my kids. Instead of being able to hand them a huge bank account, I'm hoping to hand them a bunch of times where we went off with Dad and we were all kids together, and it was amazing. I would rather apply the funds than save the funds and hold on to them. And I can promise you this. It might not be a money thing for you. This is not a giving talk. This is whatever it is that you're holding on to, your little piece of whatever. I promise you, handing it over to Jesus and letting him, what you will get in return is way better than that little bit you had hanging on to. Just imagine the disciples' stories, the things that they said. Imagine when they got done collecting all those baskets and they show back up to huddle and they're like, you have a basket too? I can't even believe what he did. Isn't that what we want? To get to the end of our day, the end of our week, the end of our month, the end of our lives and go, look what he did. And all I had to do was show up with my 2 fish and my 5 loaves. And this is why this idea of volunteering, your personal ministry, is so important to your faith and why it grows it. Because when you do it, it changes you. It changes you. Is there a difference made? Absolutely. Are people helped? For sure. But at the end of the day, you are the one that's the most different. So show up with whatever you got. And if there's something in you that's like, okay, I got to take this step before I leave here because it's going to wear off real quick, you can just stop by Big Steps. You just walk up there and be like, I got 2 fish. What do you need help with? They'll look at you funny, but hopefully by the end of the 3rd service, they get it. I got 2 fish. How can I help? Or scan the QR code on the back of the seat in front of you. There's a I'm ready to volunteer. Do something that's personal ministry where you are meeting the needs of somebody else, and watch how that stretches, strengthens, and grows your faith. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for inviting us to be part of what you're doing, because you don't need us, but you love us and you want us to experience the fullest of lives. You want us to have our faith grown and trust you more so that we can have a deeper relationship with the one who made us. And you invite us, because of that, to be a part of what you're doing. And so there's going to be moments where we're very tempted to say no and remember all of our nots. But will you overwhelm us a little bit with the notion that this is a way in which we can grow, that we're never more like you than when we're serving someone else. Help us to be willing to take that step. And that idea, God, of being like you when you serve somebody else was never more vivid than on the cross. You serving us and our needs. So, God, we're going to pause for just a little bit this morning and remember that. In Jesus' name, amen.